Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Satsang. For those who don't know, we use WhatsApp as a means of communication. Apart from these chats that you have available, because it's easier, it comes directly to me and makes the conversation more fluid and private. Let's make some silence first. An unmoving mind. Not necessarily a mind empty of thoughts, but a mind where attention doesn't move towards thoughts. In the presence of higher vibration in the mind, as a result of spiritual practices, intense ones, thoughts don't arise. And in this stillness, practice of stillness of attention is possible. Unmoved attention. And then, despite high vibration, or in the absence of that high spiritual vibration, either there are thoughts present or not, attention remains still. That is the gold. Either attention is moving, following different objects that appears in the mind, or is holding on to one thought, or it remains at the source. It arises from the source, and as the object is dropped, it goes back to the source again. More or less like to the door of the source. And as it remains there, not leaving it, being completely uninterested by whatever manifestation, then it merges back to the source. Silence, unmoving attention, uninterested attention, attention that holds on to the source, that rests at the source. Okay, so today we're going to talk a little bit about mental impressions. There's a term for it in Raja Yoga, which is sanskars. And these mental impressions, they are the root of everything that you are experiencing, for the better, for the worst. There's the science behind of it, which is important. So more or less, in a very resumed way, whatever you are experiencing, whatever action you are undertaking, if it creates pleasure, it creates a strong mental impression that will compel you to repeat that action again. And as you repeat it again and again and again and again and again, it becomes more difficult not to repeat it again, because the strength of those mental impressions, it's like it accumulates, builds on, it creates a very big strength. And if that action that you're undertaking creates unpleasantness, suffering, if you dislike it, it creates this mental impression that will compel you to avoid that circumstance, that kind of action. And this creates behavior patterns, creates a personality, certain personal characteristics, and ultimately it determines what will you experience. But that's not where I want to go to. So for one part, we have worldly samskaras that are connected to both pleasure and pain, connected to worldly life, a life in the absence of the divine quest. And for the other part, we have divine samskaras, which is samskaras connected to the quest of the divine and whatever is there connected to it. So as life goes on, you are increasing your stock of samskaras, life after life. Worldly samskaras, mundane samskaras, in the case of seekers of truth. Of course, this is the only context that I use. And these samskaras, as you are investing in them, they will help you eventually. But these samskaras, spiritual samskaras and worldly samskaras, they oppose each other. They are different in nature and they oppose each other. So where one is flourishing, the other isn't. And one gets worldly samskaras. They more or less facilitate a worldly life. And as you are living a worldly life, you are strengthening these worldly samskaras and making sure that the next life continues as worldly as the previous. Similarly, if you're living a spiritual life in a spiritual environment with spiritual practices, not touching these worldly life, then the room for spiritual samskaras disappears. So it is quite normal for seekers to have an early beginning, the beginnings of their lives, in worldly environments, because it starts like this, usually, depending on the samskaras. And then eventually, at a certain age, where the instruments, the body-mind complex, starts to become more mature, not ready, but a little bit more mature, then these spiritual samskaras, they can rise and starts pulling these seekers back to the spiritual quest again by the power of their samskaras. And if this is fed, if you are feeding this, then by the force of them, it takes over of your life. And even if you don't reach the end of that journey, you'll make sure that the next life will be even more suitable for spiritual practice. On the other hand, if you're living in a worldly environment, either you want it or not, you are feeding these worldly samskaras and making it more difficult for you to arrive to the end of your journey. Everything matters, every detail matters. So both impressions are there, both sanskars. But sanskars, they need certain circumstances to arise, to manifest. In the absence of those circumstances, they don't manifest. They will generate future experience, but they will not manifest now. And sanskars that are not manifesting, they can be burned in the fire of meditation, of intense meditation, making sure that there's no continuity. So, for example, you may define yourself as being so-and-so that has these characteristics, and that it doesn't change. I am like this and this doesn't change. But that's not true. All those characteristics can change by the force of repetition and the force of absence of repetition. So no matter what behavior is, it seems impossible to change because it has been repeated so many times that the sanskars arise so strong that you can't resist. But as you resist a little bit, the weight of those sanskars decreases a little bit. It may not seem that it makes a difference in the beginning, but as you do this little by little, then it starts to become visible that the power of it is reducing. And at the same time, to replace that, if you're repeating a different behavior, with time it becomes natural. So for those that are not used to it, spiritual practices are difficult, but as you repeat it and repeat it again and again and again and again and again and again, it becomes natural. And then, even if you don't want to make the practice, you'll be ready for it. You'll be wanting it. Such is the power of sanskars, mental impressions. So what is the use of this for a seeker of truth? It's very useful into the little aspects and the big ones. So to make sure that self-realization is not a myth, you must understand these things and make the best use out of them. You can see it in the short run and in the long run. Because if you're going to try your level best, that doesn't guarantee that you'll be successful immediately or in the short run. But if you continue and you persist, eventually you'll be successful. Because illusion doesn't last forever, whatever that means. So looking at the short run, the more you abstract yourself from mundane investments, the better, because you're not increasing your stock of mundane sanskars. So you're not guaranteeing mundane experiences in the future, either in this life or in the next ones. And you're decreasing, by resisting worldly activities, you are decreasing your stock of worldly sanskars. And you're making sure again that the sanskars that you are carrying will not bear fruit. And as they are not bearing fruit, you can burn them in the fire of meditation. On the other part, involving yourself completely with spiritual practices, it will strengthen the stock of spiritual sanskars. And as you burn worldly sanskars and increase spiritual sanskars, you transform that lower nature. And eventually, you are making sure that future experiences will not come. And for the one who has no more interests in the world, what is left but self-realization? Illusion will have to give in. No other way. So for the one who aspires liberation, a divine life is the most suitable life. Dedicating yourself completely to spiritual practices, in a spiritual environment, under guidance, that is the best. Because apart from sanskars, then the spiritual environment is a place where spiritual energy is intense. And why is that? Because in a spiritual environment, in a spiritual place, supposedly, if it is a spiritual place, there is a master and there are seekers of truth. What is a seeker of truth? Is a worldly being, whatever that means, which is establishing a connection with divine consciousness. It's like a portal for divine dimensions. And that vibration gets established in that place through that process. There are others, of course, but this is the most important one for now. It's like in your meditation room. As you meditate in one place, and in the same time, repeating it again and again and again and again, those subtle vibrations start to become impregnated in that room. And when you go inside that room, it becomes easier and easier to meditate. You're strengthening your spiritual sanskars, and at the same time, you're impregnating that energy, that subtle energy, that divine energy there, depending on your level of devotion, on your sensitivity for sacredness. This energy can intensify exponentially. So in a spiritual place, like an ashram, for example, or a holy city, those vibrations are intense. They are different because, well, I will not explain that too much. But they are a little bit different. So in an ashram, The whole purpose of that place, of that holy land, is for divine connection, for self-realization. Everything revolves about this. The energy of the place is completely different. So in that place, worldly sanskars get burned and spiritual sanskars get strengthened. Of course, put like this it seems very simple, but it involves some level of suffering because, well, the power of the worldly sanskars arise and you have to let it go. You cannot go after them. This is how they get burned. But at the same time, you have the spiritual energy which is helping you. But you have to help it also, because if you're divided, well, then but even by being there, it is a blessing. But you have to be a seeker of truth, or else there's no point. There's many people live in ashrams and in spiritual places, and that doesn't make them seekers of truth. So the math only adds up to a seeker of truth. So this definition, seeker of truth, seeker of well-being, you can look at it in terms of sanskars also. The pleasure-seeking and the pain-avoiding and the confusion with spirituality and worldliness. But using the science of sanskars, if you want to make sure that self-realization is not just a dream, a life dedicated to the quest of the divine, a life which is absent of worldly endeavors, investments, this is a must. Because it doesn't matter where you are, you will make sure that things will go in a straight line towards self-realization. In theory, everything is possible. Any circumstance is possible. And everybody believes this to a certain extent, especially when it favors worldly experiences. And this is the most common thing in the modern seeker of truth, or so-called seeker of truth, which in fact it isn't. Could be, it could be, but it isn't yet. So most of these modern seekers, they tend to use this theoretical possibility to justify their permanence in worldly environments with worldly investments. But that has nothing to do with spirituality or the process of freedom, but guaranteeing their worldly experiences. Even using spirituality as a means of being special, of, well, the works. But that is only self-deception, because others, they just don't care about it. This is something that it is very difficult to understand, because you see, most people, they use their time trying to convince others that they are very good, they are very nice, they are special, they are this, they are that. And they fail to realize that others just don't care. They are too trapped in themselves, like them previously. So you're trying to convince others, but others are doing the same thing. They are not even looking at you. They will see from you what they need to see, not what you are, not what you could be, but what they need you to be. So all those investments are useless. Even so, they continue. But the greatest, the worst of it all is that you are increasing your stock of worldly sanskars with a lot of excuses, of course. And you are guaranteeing future experiences. That means absence of self-realization. So in a spiritual place, if you're dedicating yourself, spirit, of course, to the quest of truth and not looking back to what you left behind, there won't be room for worldly sanskars. You will not be creating them. At the same time, you're strengthening your level of spiritual sanskars and burning your stock of worldly sanskars. So in time, whatever that means, it's unavoidable. In a worldly environment, these spiritual vibrations are absent. It's very difficult even for you to make your meditation or to deepen your meditation. For the majority, it's just superficial, even if you think it isn't. And your worldly sanskars, they are much more strengthened. And in the absence of that spiritual energy, it is more difficult to abstain yourself from it. And you fall down, and you fall down. So people tend to see their life as important in the sense of what they can be experiencing, what they can be taking out from life. But they fail to understand that the only thing special about life is time. And where you are using, in the way you are using your time. So to understand the science and to use it can be of great advantage. So if you're a seeker of truth and your goal is liberation, it doesn't matter how naive you are, what confusions you have in your mind. It doesn't matter, because right circumstances, dedication makes a difference, makes a big difference. And to remove yourself from a worldly environment, worldly relationships, all of that is a must. Replacing it for a spiritual environment, spiritual relations, making your life, every aspect of it, dedicated to self-realization. This makes a difference. And it will make sure, either in this or in the next one, it will be unavoidable. And what really makes a difference, like I already repeated previously, if you're on the right track, or if you have the potential to be on the right track, is the presence of guidance. Not that guidance that you feel you have, that you choose from this, from that, but straightforward guidance, direct guidance. Those who have this experience that, oh, I feel this is guidance, I feel that is guidance. It can be. But if it is like this, it is telling you that this is the only possible guidance for you, because, well, what you call your ego, or whatever the name you have for it, is still too big. There's no room, there's no surrender. So there's no room for direct, clear-cut guidance. And this, in this vision of I feel this is guidance, I feel that is guidance, you are there in the middle. And you are accepting what you think it is and rejecting what you think it isn't. So you are accepting that which suits your delusion and avoiding that which endangers your delusion, that goes against your personal beliefs. So that is too soft, too subtle. It is what it is, and it is what it is possible. But there's a lot to grow still. For all seekers of truth, instead of the goal to be already self-realization, If you work hard to become a seeker of truth, the one who surrenders to the divine, that would shorten the distance by a lot. So time is the most precious thing you have. Use it wisely. So if there's any questions about this subject or others, whenever you are watching this satsang, you can send your questions to that number that appears there, and they will be answered in the next one. So someone is here asking, where are you from? That is a very nice question. Not sure how to answer that. I'm from where I'm needed, whatever that means. So if you're in the moment where your spiritual sanskaras are arising, and you're in the middle of a worldly life, use your common sense and start making some pointers. Those who want to live that life, they understand that they are, how do you say this? They are trapped there because of their dependency. But all these dependencies, they are just ideas. Nothing really holds you. But as you establish yourself with the vision on creating those circumstances where you can intensify your spiritual path, that is the best. And eventually, as you strengthen those spiritual sanskaras with spiritual practice, intense meditation, different paths will start opening in front of you, because you are giving a chance to the spiritual sanskars that you are carrying, and they will help you. And if you have a chance to find a spiritual place, then that will help you a lot. Preferably, guidance will come first, or during, or whatever. Okay. Oh, there's something here. So for today, that's it. Next satsang will be Wednesday. Wednesday, 9 o'clock in the morning, Brazilian time. That means UTC -3 for everyone. Till then, well, use your time wisely. Okay, watch.